What's up, everyone? And welcome back to the Blazing Toku Moviethon, Godzillathon edition. As
Godzilla!
as we've been talking about for, I think, nearly a year now, we are talking about Gojira, the original Japanese masterpiece. Or at least that's what this DVD calls it.
I mean, pretty accurate.
It's pretty accurate.
Pretty accurate.
But we are also going to be talking about the 1956 atrocity that is Godzilla King of the Monsters.
I was not prepared.
You weren't ready
Neither
for
of us
Steve
were.
Martin?
Oh, Steve Martin. Oh, Steve Martin.
Like, and here's the one thing I think we got to get out of the way. Like, Gojira is a classic in the genre, let alone movies. Like,
I mean, it's in, like, what is it? There's, like, a vault where it's, like, there's, like, classic movies that need to be preserved forever.
Like, this has to be one of them.
Like, it's in there, right? Like,
It
Shrek's
should
in
be.
there. Gojira is in there, right?
Yeah,
Like,
again, it's 70 years old.
I forget the name of it. I'm probably gonna have people telling me what it is, but it's fine.
Wait, the name of what?
The vault thing I was talking about.
Yeah, not a time capsule.
I don't know. I'm not that smart.
But either way, like, there's obviously, like, this is a masterpiece and a masterwork of a movie. From the music to the special effects. Like, there is very little to say on that we can. But there is so much that makes this still definitively maybe the best Godzilla film of all time. Like,
It set the bar.
It set the
So.
bar pretty high because it wasn't just goofy monsters. It had a serious message that it was trying to propose. And it just did it really well. It was honestly still really engaging and everything else, which I can't necessarily say about King of the Monsters. That movie could get a little aggravating at times. And if you like the 1956 King of the Monsters, that's not a problem.
I'm sure it's in plenty of people's childhood. Like,
Well,
as
the
like
other
a
thing is-
birthplace of like why they love Godzilla, I imagine.
And we also have to give the respect to it that it was what brought Godzilla to America.
Yeah.
It is what we can see as, like, very important. Hell.
But Steve
in-
Martin, man. Steve
well, the
Martin,
funny
my
thing is,
boy.
Raymond Burr, who played Steve Martin, they put into another movie when they had to splice him into the American version of Godzilla 1984. Like, he was in there
Huh?
with a Dr. Pepper vending machine behind him. Yeah, there was Dr. Pepper.
You would drink
placements.
Dr. Pepper.
And
I also love Dr. Pepper.
again, this movie was just so much fun. It was just dealing with, like, how do you deal with Godzilla? And it's super funny. Like, we'll definitely be talking about this when we talk about Godzilla -1 as well.
Oh my gosh, it's an homage at the very least.
Well, it's super funny to see that the franchise lasted so long that they could put a timepiece for around when the movie was made.
Yeah, because like I remember one of the things I asked, because you knew a lot more going in than I do, was like, oh, is this like a timepiece, or is it like when does this take place? And he's just like, in the present of the time that it was made. And it's like, oh, interesting.
And again, like, even all the characters were really well done, and everything else, like
You were
the
talking-
paleontologist who put up the very good point of maybe they should study Godzilla, but then we also have to acknowledge that Godzilla is curve-stomping cities.
Yeah, but like, here's the thing. One of the things I understood a lot about, I don't agree with him, but where I saw where he was coming from with like, maybe we should keep him alive to figure out what we do with radiation. It's like, because thinking about the time that this came out, this was them breaking, I feel like it was almost like them like trying to break their silence a little bit of just like, we're suffering too from all of this. Like
Yeah,
they
there's a lot
they
of,
got
like, do we tell America?
like, there's so
or ask
much,
for help? Not just
exactly,
America.
like, or just like the world for help after the craziness of World War II. But it's like as you were what, I forgot. I lost my train of thought.
It's fine. But, like, it just also went to show the travesty. Like, the opening scene, which is completely cut in King of the Monsters, like, they completely change around when the opening scene is, was this epic shot about this, like, boat pretty much getting attacked by Godzilla, but you don't see him, but you have the music and, like, the ocean and everything else.
Just
and
the
it was really
devastation
well shot.
without even seeing him.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like, it immediately puts you on edge of being like, what is this monster? And yes,
And then the radiation does come in
yeah. And
with
then-
that, and I'm gonna leave that back because I remember what I was trying to say.
Okay, what were you trying to say?
With like the radiation, because like this was something that they were dealing with everywhere as like a serious medical thing. Like I imagine if you were Japanese in this point in time, like you probably knew at least one person that had radiation poisoning or sickness or was affected by it in some way, or maybe like their children were affected in some way. That was like such a issue that they were dealing with. So it's like thinking about it of just like he's like we could find something that's resistant to this and help people.
Yeah.
It's just like that would be because Godzilla was able to survive an H bomb, as they were saying, and he's like he was able to not only like survive but thrive because of it. If we could study him long enough, we could do something miraculous.
He's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
He's like it's a one of a kind, unique thing to Japan, which I feel like does kind of lead into a little bit more of like a sensationalism thing that we do see in other movies. But I feel like that's like not what the movie's about. So
it definitely isn't, and it's like you kind of. It's funny they say that there's a love story in this when there's really not between like Ogawa and like Emiko.
When you told me there was a love triangle, that felt so weird.
That was America who said that. Like, it very much felt like I feel like I was getting arranged marriage, or I promised Sarazawa.
I did not actually watch.
I don't love him.
I did not actually watch this, by the way. You just showed me a couple of key scenes that made you laugh.
Oh my god, there were so many things that.
The screaming car.
The screaming car was the best part.
Like you literally sent me a video of you just like laughing at this like screaming car.
I would show a clip, but that would be me showing an actual clip of the movie.
And then we would not exist anymore. We just disappear.
So sorry.
I don't want to disappear.
And again, it just kind of is people kind of having to come to terms with. I'm realizing I'm stumbling on my words a lot.
I am too. Don't worry about it, dude. We're in this together.
With a monster like Godzilla, but you have this island that, like the Odo Islands, that believe in this creature. Like they had sacrifices and everything else. Like they were like, yes, this is our god, and he's angry.
Yeah, when I'm so used to hearing like, oh yeah, we like threw a virgin into a volcano. You know what I mean? Like I'm so used to hearing that kind of stuff. So when they were like, oh yeah, we would like sacrifice a young lady to the sea to appease Godzilla, and then they just like.
Yeah, and
I was just like, is no one going to address the throwing of a woman into the ocean?
Then there's just so many different
throwing of a woman.
Like there's also a ton of Godzilla in this, like a lot more than I would have expected.
There's so much more Godzilla in this than I was expecting, and he shows up really early too.
Oh yeah, and like you see so much destruction that you can actually, with the other two films that we'll be talking about, you'll see
the miniatures in this movie, spectacular. They look amazing.
I'm also talking about like how you get down on ground level and you just see how some people just die.
Yeah, and like one of the things I wasn't expecting to be in this movie, because I was expecting like, oh, him peeking over the hill, or like, oh, him like people running away and then him like approaching or something like that. But there was one specific scene I was surprised was even in this movie, was like, oh, there were people running into like an alleyway and then you see his foot just sweep by. And I was impressed that they were even able to get a shot like that.
It's a movie from 1954.
Like, I am so impressed by, like, this movie, how it came out in the time that it did. Like, it's not, like, I wouldn't say it's, like, a perfect movie. I feel like that doesn't exist, honestly.
It's damn near it, though.
I feel like having the perfect movie doesn't exist. But, like, it's, like, I think just the thought of this came out in the 50s. In black and white, and it looks this good. It still looks this good, and all that we've done is clean up the footage. It's like that's.
It's like yeah,
how
could the Godzilla suit be a little bit
talent?
Better? Maybe, but it's also super charming. Like he has a personality, he has a face, he has like weird facial expression when you see him go and open up his mouth and stuff, and you just see so much good destruction.
Again, the miniatures and like the destruction, the fire, like this was also in King of the Monsters, but like those big like metal power lines melting. One of the things that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough, other than like radiation. What was that? The big like 3-pronged thing that we saw like flop over because it melted.
There was two.
Was there two?
There was a scene later with the radio tower as well.
Oh yeah, like the reporters were on it, right?
Yeah, but then you're talking about the early Tokyo attack when they were like, we're gonna shock the shit out of Godzilla, and then it doesn't work.
One of the things that I feel like isn't appreciated enough in other Godzilla films, other than again just radiation in general, is the heat. It's just like you don't really see like things like melting around him unless she's in specifically burning, but then it's like of course,
using his atomic breath to do it as well.
Yeah, it just kind of looked like just fire because he just is he's basically just a nuclear
there was
plant.
Like a whole scene where they were talking about like he's leaving a sea of fire behind him. But then you get to the story with Serizawa. And it is a very surrealist story. And spoiler alert for a 70-year-old movie, we are getting into spoilers.
Well, you don't know what happens in this old movie that everyone talks about?
Yeah.
No, wait, this is the first video anyone has ever talked about this movie ever. This is so original. This is the most original idea we could have possibly done.
Nobody else has done it. I hit the microphone. But, like, him creating the Oxen Destroyer and immediately regretting it. He's like, I have made a weapon worse than a nuke.
And, like, the way that they treat the weight of that, of just, like, he's like, I don't want to be known as the scientist that made this destruction. He does, and then it's put in perspective of, God, if you were a scientist that only wanted to do good things and then you accidentally made an atom bomb, how would you feel, you know? Tell me how you feel into this microphone. Like,
and again,
pretty dang bad.
Pretty much being like,
I have a hair on my face.
At the end, just being like, fine, this thing's only ever getting used once.
He's like, because he even said, I was waiting for it to be put to a good use. Like, he was trying to find a good use for this amazing thing that he created, but he just created
a weapon.
A weapon, and he's like, I can't let anyone else make this.
Research, as you know, and then you get the iconic ending of Godzilla and his sacrifice.
I do have to mention before we move on from that, like, just because it's like I was exposed to this movie so much before I legitimately sat down and watched it and didn't accidentally fall asleep watching it.
Yeah.
I am guilty of accidentally doing that at least once. Like the scene where he's showing Emiko is her name,
Emiko,
right?
Yeah.
When Dr. Serizawa is showing her what his weapon does, and you just see her do like the 50s like scream.
Oh, no.
And then she like falls into him and stuff and like borderline faints. I always saw that and thought it was like typical 50s overacting, that
cheesy.
That was like just acting for the time and age, you know? But like the acting in this is so subtle and so good, and you see emotion on people's face, like the reporter that we were talking about as the radio tower fell, just having like sweat and tears, just his eyes puffy, his hands shaking as he's just like doing what he can, and then he says farewell, you know, as it falls and he dies, you know. But like in that scene specifically, like I had that thought that I always had with just like, oh yeah, it's like that overacting, but it's like, no, it made sense in this moment, because that's like the one
you saw fish turn into bones.
I mean, if you think about it, just like this person that you know wanted to do good in the world made something that you just saw just life away. Mm-hmm. It just like made these fish practically poof out of existence. I'd probably act a little similar, you know.
Well, yeah.
So it's like, wow, I in a way, I guess I judged the movie ahead of time in that way, of just like expecting it to be like, it'll be a classic movie with good stuff, but it's still gonna be an old movie. And I'm just like, no, this is just a good movie. It just happened to come out in the 50s.
There's a reason this is.
I really hope it actually came out in the 50s, and I've been saying that correctly, so I don't sound really stupid.
Yeah, it came out in 1954.
Thank God.
But again, this is one of those movies. There's a reason this is still considered the best Godzilla movie.
I see the argument.
It's very hard to top.
It's a classic for a reason. It's survived this long for a reason. Well, there's a reason it's still good.
We wouldn't have any of it without it.
Mm-hmm.
And it started with such a sincere and honest message of being like, we should strive to do better from what happened with the atom bomb, but also try to not cause as much destruction and know the weight of the weapon you create. And like that's kind of what they do with Serizawa and everything. And I like his journey, where it's like he went from being like nobody should know about it to being like
a sense of duty. I have to. This is the only thing that could really help people. I wanted to help people. I wanted to use this to help people. This is the only way I'm gonna ever be able to.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and something I never thought of just like, oh, I always understood that, oh, he went under, he died with Godzilla with the bomb so that it couldn't be created again. I fully understood that already going into the movie, but they like put it really into perspective in a very human way of like him just like, even if I were to burn all of my research, if I destroyed everything, it's still in here. And if I unleash this weapon, the world is going to know that it exists, and they're going to know it's in at least one spot. you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it put into perspective of just like, oh my god, like I can absolutely
They
see exactly what he
immediately told you he's
means
gonna
of like
kill
just
himself.
like someone would absolutely like 5 minutes after seeing this would be like, hey, go abduct that guy so he can come and
Yeah,
make
what was
bombs
the name
for
of that
us.
scientist? Serizawa? Get him.
Yeah, just like get the
Get that eye
torture chamber
patched.
ready, I guess.
But like, and then we get the
He
iconic.
like I understood the weight, I guess you could say.
Exactly.
You could say.
And then that's just kind of how it ends. He tells Emiko and Ogawa to have a good life together,
And
and
Emiko's acting, oh my god, with I'm so sorry to like just like go back to that, but the scene where like she like after she told, I forget his name, the
Ogawa.
Ogawa
Ogawa.
about Dr. Serizawa after she saw the destruction, of just like her just like knowing again, and she understands the weight
Of the
of
promise she
telling
made.
of the promise that she made of I'm not going to tell anybody, but she also understands the weight of not breaking that promise, and it's just like you know, and then just like shaking and sobbing because it's just like they said that he was like a brother figure to her, right?
Well, yeah, that's
Like not her
immediately
actual
why, where
brother,
it's like,
but like an
'cause
older
he was-
figure,
'cause-
older brother figure kind of thing.
Exactly. She's like, oh, he's more of an older brother to me.
And it's like, can you imagine like having someone that you are that close with and then just being like, hey, that like really excruciating thing that you showed me, I had to tell him, can you kill yourself for us?
And again,
Wow.
the ending
I'm
is-
really sorry that if that was
yeah,
too
we're
forward.
trying not to make any.
I'm not making any jokes or anything. It's just like that's the gravity of what they were dealing with. It is that serious. Like, and that's what happened in the movie.
Yeah, and Serizawa makes the ultimate sacrifice and goes with the oxygen.
It's so
and
sad.
Godzilla.
It's so sad.
And yeah, and it's just kind of sad to see. Unless you play the Dreamcast game where you can play as a giant Dr. Serizawa and destroy Japan.
I've been thinking about that ever since we watched it, but I haven't mentioned it. I was wondering if you were also thinking about it.
Oh, the Dreamcast game?
Yeah, where you just play a
Legends?
giant Dr. Serizawa carrying an oxygen destroyer.
Alright, we should talk about King of the Monsters now. So I watched King of the Monsters, and we only gave you the highlights.
What a
It
highlight.
butchered so much out of this movie. They've obviously added all the scenes with Raymond Burr, and he will not shut up throughout the movie. He's constantly just being like, and the tragedy will behold. Nobody has ever seen anything like this before. And you did get a glimpse of that for one scene in the original movie, which is the radio tower scene that we were talking about. So that scene got completely cut. And
it also makes sense because it's just like, oh, I'm far enough away to actually see what's going on. I need to let people know what's happening. Someone needs to be alive enough, long enough.
and you just get Steve Martin, who's just pretty much bumbling around and just being like, I guess
Hello, I
I'm
am the
part of
main
this.
character.
Yeah, exactly. It is
I'm your
I,
new main
Steve
character.
Martin, and nobody's ever seen this before, and I work for America, because we need an American in this movie. It's just like... He just...
Why are you there, Steve Martin? Why are you there?
It destroyed so much tension. It states Serizawa and her... And
Didn't they also
Emiko and
they completely ruined a couple of scenes that were just so silent and beautiful with showing like the
boat scene was
destruction.
completely cut, I think.
They cut when you told me that like King of the Monsters added a bunch of stuff but was shorter than the original, I got scared. I was like, "Oh my god, you're kidding me."
Yeah.
And then it just bruh. And like taking like some of the scenes, like the woman that was like screaming holding her children, like everyone had already evacuated, Godzilla's literally right there, but she's just like paralyzed holding her crying kids like, we're gonna be with daddy soon, like.
And then they just open up, by the way, and they reuse that scene with the hospital like a bunch of times.
Yeah, it opens up with like all of like the people being carried into
Also,
a
like,
hospital.
You get to next to no scenes
Like,
with Sarah.
you can understand the tragedy that you're looking at. Oh my goodness, look at all the bodies. That's crazy, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. And you barely get any scenes with Serizawa or Gotogawa.
there's a love triangle.
Yeah, but they just state that there was a love triangle just to explain the start and the sacrifice at the end. But then they
Why
really
would you
don't
have to
see-
explain it? It's a sacrifice. It's literally just, I made a terrible weapon. I can't let this exist. Like, that's pretty straightforward.
It's just not.
But
good.
no,
And if
it's
you
for the
enjoy it-
love of
Honestly,
Emiko.
if you have a bunch of friends and you're just enjoying it and you're laughing at it,
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
Have a good time.
I kind of want to watch this with you, like, as, like, oh my gosh, let's see what they did to this movie kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
after, like, the highlights that you've given me,
Okay,
I would love to
here's
rip
my
on it.
recommendation. make sure you watch Gojira, but at least make sure one time you've seen King of the Monsters.
It's worth at least a shot.
You need to witness what
It's
America
fun.
did to it the first time.
Have fun making fun of it.
Yeah, exactly.
We deserve it.
Because it was very, very doofy, and it was very... It just was not as good as the original. Obviously.
What? No. You're
But,
kidding me.
Like, what else can we say outside of that this is a genuinely super good movie? Like, how can we not recommend Gojira?
I mean, it's Gojira.
Like, what else are we gonna say? Is it really gonna take a couple of people in helmets and masks to really tell you that you need to watch this movie?
And if you do, hey, go watch the movie.
Make sure you watch the movie.
Yes, support the official release.
But yeah, do you have any final thoughts? What was your favorite scene?
That's a good question. Do you have anything off the top of your head? Or
One of my favorite scenes, honestly, was like the moment they were building up to him attacking Tokyo with those electrical towers, because you just get that music starting to swell and it just starts going, and like you just get this massive amount of destruction and just nothing working on him. It was amazing.
It was mesmerizing in a way of just like, wow, nothing is stopping that thing.
Again, and
wow.
Sarazawa was probably my favorite character because it's like you understood kind of just him being like, I fucking hate my life. I don't want to live in it anymore. I don't even want to be me anymore.
Oh, God, why?
Well,
it's so hard to pick a good scene because I just like, I was going to be like, I like this part, but I like these parts around it, so maybe this to this. But I'm like, no, that's like a couple of scenes.
Okay.
So it's like...
Okay, just say it.
A lot of like the Sarazawa stuff was like what I ended up really liking. A lot of the things with like Emiko having to like witness all of like, it's like, oh, well, can you not tell anybody about this thing that could kill Godzilla? And then you just see the absolute carnage that she witnesses of just lakes of fire, people screaming, people dying left and right, and just, I gotta stop this. Like, if I'd have just maybe convinced him or something, or like just, again, like just like the series of events, I guess, of just her like breaking and then having to tell him, feeling so bad and knowing the weight of the situation, and then just like having to talk to Sarazawa and him having to realize it. Maybe my favorite part of all, like, because it's just building up to that, is just also what I really like, I guess. No, I yes, that is a very good scene, but like I think it's like him when he finally when Dr. Sarazawa finally finds the resolve to do it, of just like, you're right. And then he shows that they're right by starting to burn his work and just being like, this is what I have to do if I'm going to do it. So, and then that's like them just being like, and then them knowing the circumstances and the weight of everything that he is doing as he is destroying this, and her just sobbing. Like, what a good and powerful scene that was built up so well and pays off so good, right? Like, exactly. I really like, I guess, like that like scene of just like that resolve being found as it fades out.
Yeah, and also I will say, be in the mood. Don't feel like you have to watch it right away. Because if you're
it's a downer.
It's
a bit of a bummer. It's a sad movie.
Yeah, exactly. If you are not for a depressing movie, or you're not a big fan of black and white movies, wait until you're like, you know what, I should get around to it. You should definitely watch Gojira.
Especially if you like black and white movies or old monster movies, like, obviously. You've probably already seen it.
Exactly. It took me a while to really get into it, but ever since then, I adore this movie.
It's such a good movie. Like, again, you have to be in the mood to watch that, because it is
depressing. 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 for me, honestly.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's like, what more could you really ask for? It's a classic for a reason. Like it's been so well preserved for a reason.
Yeah, this
like,
is just us talking about
it's
why
probably like, if there were to be like, you could only save so many movies as like a catalog of like the human race, and it's like oh, like what were some of the most important movies that were ever made? This would be in there.
I would want it to be in there.
Like, I feel like it almost needs to be, because it's just so it's still relevant.
Yeah.
Like, it's just such a photograph of the time, and then it's just, but also just like that relevance still stays.
Yeah.
I guess, because it's just like a lot of we don't learn from a lot of our mistakes, so.
Yeah.
We're doomed to repeat them in Godzilla -1!
Well, kinda.
Kinda.
We'll talk about that. But yeah, do you have anything?
But
else
next
you
we're
really want to say?
what was that?
Got anything else you really want to say? About
Next we're
Godzilla?
doing Shin.
We are actually. Thank you for going right into that. So yeah, next week we'll be talking about Shin Godzilla, another Godzilla heavy hitter from 2016.
Another really good movie that we get to watch and talk about.
But yeah, do you have any final thoughts on Gojira?
If you haven't seen it, see it.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those where it's like, I'm just like, why didn't I watch
Again,
it?
tell us your thoughts down in the comments. Tell us what you think of Gojira.
You're about
Tell
to...
us what Godzilla movies you want to see on the Godzilla Moviethon. And, you know, just share those down in the comments, and we'll see what happens. So, until we talk about Shin Godzilla next week.
Thank you so much for watching and watching us talk about Godzilla.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.